Episode 150 of Expert Roundup. We got another restaurant guy in town from Tampa. We got Peter. We're going to come back and talk about growth strategies and what it takes to succeed in 2023. Be back in a second. Wish I was a good dancer because I could come out of that with some type of move because that beat just hits, but I can't dance. I'm as wide as they get.
You did a fantastic job. And let me tell you, I don't know if you can see this. You just appeared on my watch. There, you're upside down.
How is that?
Because I have this Apple Watch, right?
Yeah.
And I'm trying to show it to you. See you?
Yeah, it's cool.
As soon as your LinkedIn went live.
Okay, let me see a picture of that. I'm going to get a picture of that. Is it still there?
Yeah, hold on. There it is. Got to take it quick. I can't really get my arm the right way here.
There we go.
There you go.
Love it. That's the coolest thing ever. I've never seen that.
As soon as your little intro went up, it popped right on my wrist. Isn't that amazing?
I might buy an Apple Watch just for that reason, just to look at myself.
Yeah, get the Ultra. You're a runner, right?
Yeah.
I'm using this for running, swimming, biking. It's just freaking incredible. Excuse my language.
I love it. Well, so yeah. Peter, tell us who you are, where you hail from, and about your business.
Yeah. So, Matt, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, my friend. I think that for those that know me, I'm the author of Restaurant Strong. Restaurant Strong came out right after the pandemic, and it was based on really 10 years of study into how category leaders, whether independent or chain, really across the globe, have differentiated themselves to everybody else in terms of growth and scale, and sort of what are the underlying drivers of that, right? And I'm based out of Tampa, Florida, as you know, but my clients are in world capitals and large cities, and some in smaller places, but all over the United States and some in Europe.
Love it.
Yeah.
So the weather in Tampa right now is not cold and overcast like it is in Kentucky, right?
It's perfect. It's like 75 degrees out. And
I was hoping you were going to say it was cold.
We're going to go see the Orlando Magic tonight. So life is good.
Are they any good?
Yeah, they're not great, but it's fun to go see the NBA once in a while.
On Tampa Bay, you had a pretty good run on hockey for
football, baseball. Last few years, we've been making a killing. We don't have our own basketball team, so we have to drive over to Orlando for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the author of Restaurant Strong, you've got a copy of it there. I can't find it. Somebody jacked the copy off my bookshelf, but
there you go.
Get online, find a copy of that. Is it available on your website at peterlesar.com?
Yeah, you can go to the website, everybody. You can go down and you can find it there. There's a link. There's a little video about it, and all my bona fides are there. It's good for people to read through that.
Cool. So check that out. And if you're one of the employees of America's Best Restaurants in the headquarters and you jacked my book, bring it back or I'm going to find you.
We're coming for you.
I'm going to find him and I'm going to beat him with an orange hoodie filled with orange Solo cups.
Oh my God.
So let's talk about 2023. It's I guess we're kind of coming out of the pandemic. I guess it's over. I don't know. I've never officially heard. I thought it was over years ago, but who knows? And we're in the middle of high gas prices and food costs, and the labor part is kind of coming around the corner. What are you seeing for next year with regards to what restaurants should be looking at and paying attention to, and where are their best opportunities to grow?
Yeah, well, number one, regardless of where we are in our cycles and our restaurant history, you got to focus on same store growth, right? It really is all about your revenue growth rate as your number one metric.
Okay.
And that's, we can dig into sort of the math of that, but I think people get sort of lost in the fear and the greed of different parts of the cycle. And what they really don't realize is, as you know really well in your own business, Matt, it's how much your revenue is growing compared to everybody else that makes the most difference long term to compounding a really high level of income, right? And so for this year ahead, consumer demand is dropping, right? Particularly if you are in a community that has a lot of renters rather than a lot of homeowners, right?
Okay.
So people who are in communities with lots of homeowners are not necessarily seeing a flattening. A lot of them are still seeing quite a bit of growth, but it's starting to flatten. Okay, that growth rate, and in some communities where people have been more hit by inflation, I communities with a lot of renters or with out negative immigration or migration, excuse me. So a lot of northern states are losing people to southern states, so they can also be quite affected, and so the country of restaurants is really being separated in this next year along those lines more than anything else, right? Are you in a wealthier community? You're probably going to be at least maintain a flat level revenue. Are you in a place that's still got good net inflow of people? You're going to do okay, and other areas are falling off faster than they have been in the past. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, a lot of sense because, like you said, the renters are going to be more affected by these short-term blips in the economy and the costs of going up. I mean, costs are going up. You go to eat out. I've eaten out recently, my wife and son, and it was $64 at a place that it was probably $35 4 years ago.
That's absolutely right. And a lot of renters are paying a lot more rent.
Okay.
Right. So it's not only are their food costs going up, but all their fixed expenses that they need to survive have gone up before they even get to discretionary income in relation to restaurants. So that discretionary income went from like here to maybe here, right? and then the costs within that discretionary space of restaurants have gone way up. So restaurants in those spaces are suffering, right? Yeah. And ironically, what's happening is if you are an Applebee's, for example, your biggest growth area are now people that make over $100,000, right? Because what's happened is they were not going to Applebee's, but now they are also downsizing their restaurant budget to that class, right? And people who were going to Applebee's are now going to, fast casual, which is actually not that cheap anymore, or fast food, right? And so
which isn't cheap either anymore.
Yeah, exactly right. So everybody's growth opportunity is the segment above what you had socioeconomically speaking, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, right? And so you do need to turn and focus on them because they're out looking for cheaper places.
But here's the key thing I see. It's right now we're in December. Yeah. What is if you're an 8-year-old kid, what is all your attention and excitement right now?
Yeah, it's what's coming for the holidays.
It's Christmas. They're waiting. They're waiting. That 8-year-old kid's waiting and wanting to do something. And there's two things I always talk about with restaurants. And I think a lot of them got lazy before the pandemic.
Right.
And then during the pandemic, they panicked, but then people came flocking back at certain times. And now we're in this pocket afterwards that the restaurants, people are still eating right now. Like you said, they've changed classes of what they're eating.
That's right.
Certain classes aren't eating out as much. And if that person that was eating at your place before isn't eating out as much, you've got to do what you have to do to keep their attention. And I talked to a restaurant yesterday who was asking for advice. And I started looking at their stuff, and they're not active on TikTok. They're not active on LinkedIn. They're not active on YouTube. They're kind of active on Facebook. They're more active on Instagram than anything. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, take the same content. Find a way to leverage attention. Find a way to you got 10 to 15 platforms that are free.
Right.
You've got community groups all around you on Facebook. This restaurant in particular also did catering. I'm like, you realize that people on LinkedIn are more inclined to probably have catering in their world than people on Facebook. But at the same time, people on LinkedIn also eat food every day for lunch and dinner and breakfast. You've got to leverage attention. And that's what I see as an opportunity. I did a webinar a couple weeks ago based off a Harvard Business Journal, which you haven't seen. It's the fall edition. It's got a dart on the front, and it's talking about marketing, social media.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. And the part that I took away from it was the huge opportunity that there is in spending money to reach 45, 50 plus year old people, because McDonald's and Coke and Pepsi, Red Bull, all the people who spend 95% of the ad dollars aren't going after me or you.
Right.
They're going after my son and daughter, and I feel kind of bad for them because my son and daughter don't have anywhere close to as much money as I have.
Right.
But what that opens up, that fast casual restaurant that's in the suburbs, it's cheaper than ever to reach Matt Plapp on those platforms. Like, I just looked at a restaurant for a client of mine, or a referral source. She's in the accounting world. She sent me a link and said, hey, there's a restaurant I'm going to refer you to. And I looked up, they're not running any Facebook ads, and their target demo is a 40-year-old.
Right.
Like, it costs you pennies to reach that person on Facebook. You've got to leverage those platforms to get attention so that when that person who was eating out 7 times a week is now eating out twice, that you're in that twice.
Right. Yeah. I see not just that, but, my world is researching what the world's most sort of famous and successful brands, whether independent or chain, do, right? And it's sort of, now going on 13, 14 years of just ongoing research, right? That inform my book and inform my trainings and so forth, right? And what you see time and again when you contrast what they do to everybody else is that most restaurants really don't understand how to truly differentiate their products at the same time, right? Yep. So they don't see themselves as solution providers, even though all of our leaders do, right? And they're all developing sort of solutions as their focus for product development. And so not only are they losing out opportunities in marketing, but they're losing out opportunities on getting even higher ROIs to their marketing because they don't have the product development expertise and the differentiated trajectory to inform that advertising the way that our leaders do, right? That makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
And my what I always see with restaurant groups, even groups that have 10 to 30 restaurants, when you start to talk to them, they don't understand what their sort of differentiation path is over time. They started a concept based on a food type, a format, and an experience that they built around that, which is not how any of our today's leaders actually form their restaurant concepts anymore. And then they think they're done, right? But actually, that's just your starting point. You need to have an end goal that you're building towards every day that really powers up your differentiation, so that when you're putting products and services and experiences in front of people on a marketing basis, they react to them very differently than they might otherwise. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I actually, what is this? I got here. Here it is. I got a quote. I'm reading one of a book on, oh gosh, my mind went blank here. Steve Jobs, Secret of Steve Jobs, and how he presents. And a couple of things that he had in here, which made sense to me this morning. The one thing that he talks about is, his infectious nature. But he also talked about, he was talking to a executive, I guess, that was leaving. He was trying to woo from Pepsi back in the day.
Right.
He said, do you want to spend the rest of your life selling sugared water, or do you want a chance to change the world?
Right.
And it talked about his presentation, how his presentations were just steeped in passion for his mission.
Yeah.
And how he constantly adjusted. He didn't just stick on the iPod. He didn't stick on the desktop. It didn't stick on the laptop. And you got the damn watch on right there. He kept going up. And I look at our companies the same way. Like, I've got within our scope of what we help restaurants do is one of our tactics from 9 years ago. Still works, still dominates, but it's not all we do. And
right.
Like you mentioned Applebee's earlier. Applebee's, from what I've heard and I've seen, it's a lot of microwaves these days, but it used to be the restaurant 15, 20 years ago, and they had an identity. And then that identity was the same. They never updated it. And as new employees came in, the identity went away. And I couldn't tell you what Applebee's even stands for now.
Yeah.
And what I love the most, like, we deal in different worlds. I deal exclusively with independents. And so we're dealing with, some guys have 15 to 20 independents. Some guys have, guys and ladies have 1 or 2 locations. But the one thing I love most about them is, I always say, your biggest advantage is that you're not a cruise ship, that you're a 10-foot track or aluminum fishing boat, and you can get down the swamps and turn left and right really quick and do a 360. I had a consulting meeting with a CEO of a big brand a while back, and he wanted to hire us to do some stuff. And I said, I wouldn't do it. He said, why? I said, because it's going to take you 6 months of meetings to get my shit across the finish line. Right. You've got your marketing director, you've got your implementer, you've got your CFO, your CMO, you got all these C's. And I said, by the time I give you advice that you believe in, because this guy believed in me, lock, stock, and barrel. I said, now you've got to sell it down line. Now we've got 10 meetings. And by the time we get to the 6-month period, you've got a new marketing person. Sure enough, exactly what I said happened. He didn't hire us. He hired me, did some stuff with him. And exactly what happened. 6 months later, brand new marketing person. Oh, whole new direction.
Yeah.
And then that person's going to come in and take a year to put something in place. And that's what I struggle with the most, is that you've got to be nimble. Everybody all of a sudden became really nimble when the pandemic hit. Like, I knew a guy that had been fighting me on third party and online ordering for 6 months. And then when the pandemic hit March 16th here in Kentucky and it shut down everything, well, March 17th, he had online order. I'm like, well, he didn't listen to me for 6 months, but he did it. And we all became nimble. But then once we're pushed out of survival mode, I think, and I don't know if you've seen this, when you're in survival mode, you'll do whatever it takes quick. When you're kind of out of survival mode, oh shit, now we got to think about everything for 6 months.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't agree more. First of all, as we're discussing before the call, it's ironic. So I work with generally bigger sectors. I do trainings that are for your segment, right? Yep. And I got a same store growth training that people can go see on my site now that works great for positioning strategy and sort of how to build marketability into your business and how to think about growth math versus operating math. And it's great for your segment, right? But my clients are bigger companies, right? And what happens is that, as we're talking about before the call, 70% of the calls I get are for people that need rescues, right, before they need growth strategy, right? Okay.
Yep.
And you really want it to be the other way around, because those 30% that are growing really well, but they still don't have optimized positioning, right? They don't have maybe an optimized capital structure and all the sort of the growth and scale barriers that I work on. That they're really fun, whereas everybody else takes a little while to figure out how to restructure, right? Yeah. Which is really valuable work because people need that desperately, right? But it goes to your point, and that is this industry of ours is one of the slowest to change, right? McDonald's came up with the assembly line kitchen 60 years after assembly lines first started in America, right? So any restaurateur out there who is moving ahead of curves has a built-in competitive advantage just from their character and their personality, right? Yep. They have to get ahead of the right curves. That's what positioning is all about, right? But that mindset is not as common as it should be, and that's an advantage for those that have that mindset.
Yep, and you can't make this stuff up. As I'm this morning, like one of the only places I don't have social media or email on my phone. I have YouTube.
Yeah,
and I did that intentionally because I want to stay focused on the business and life. So I literally, what I preach to all my customers, I have none of it on my phone, but I have YouTube. And I'll watch. What I like about YouTube is it forces me to watch 10, 15, 20-minute clips of stuff.
Yeah.
This is what popped up today. Ray Kroc visits his first ever McDonald's. This is a clip from the movie Founder, which is awesome if you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
What are the odds? You're talking about that assembly line, and that was his first impression. Like, I don't know if you remember that scene, but he literally is like, he gets it. The guy's like, he goes, I'll take a cheeseburger and a fry and a Coke. And then the guy turns around and hands him like, what's this? It's your food. But I just ordered. I know, this is it. And he was all confused, like, what happened?
Those change makers inspire demand, A, and B, they build demand better than anybody else, because what they're changing is our solutions to needs, right? And so what McDonald's changed were any needs around speed, right? I have 5 minutes and I got to keep moving, right? Any needs around budget, safety, I don't have X amount of dollars. I have to eat with Y and still get 2,000 calories a day, right? And that's what changed the world, right? And so those change makers in our industry, or people who can become change makers, see that double whammy. People start watching them and getting excited by them. New customers come in, and they create stickier businesses for loyal customers because they start solving needs.
Yeah, 100%. Make
Right.
a note of that, because that's change makers is huge. I mean, you've got to be willing to change. You got to be willing to adapt. You know, there's a guy named Wim Hof. I don't know if you've ever seen him or not, the Iceman.
Yeah.
And he had a quote I saw the other day. He's like, you know, we don't put ourselves in survival mode enough. And when we do, we survive.
Right.
And I really thought long and hard about that, about all the times when I've been through 5 different crashes of the economy of some sorts.
Yeah.
And
you're still here.
Yeah, we're still, and you get more creative.
Yeah,
but what I'm trying to get my mind focused on is, you know what? It's crashing every day. Let's run hard. Let's run fast. Right. Let's change. I had a guy today that made a comment on Facebook referencing a viral video I had a few weeks back and talking about viral content. And he's like, well, I really don't understand why, because he was like, why do I want to have all these views in all these places? This had 10,000 views. This one's got 100. Why do I want to mess with putting content that's going to get 100? I'm like, because if you keep putting content like that to get 100 on 10 different platforms, 7 days a week, you know, multiple times a day for the next 5 years, you know, one, you become really good at using this media device. It's not a phone, it's a media device. Yeah. But number 2, you have consistent attention. Yeah, and for me, that's been what's allowed me to, we have never really pivoted. We just kind of alter a little, or we add a little, or we massage a little. And, you know, that whole survival thing, if I can get my mind and my mindset in survival mode, I'll constantly adapt, and the easy days become really freaking easy. And you know, if I keep doing the same thing, I'm going to get there. But I think a lot of times people sit on their hands and they're afraid to change. And, you know, they were only forced to change.
A lot of fear. And they don't understand first principles, right? So you just named one, which is, you know, a first principle restaurants, which is, by the way, again, this book is all about the first principles of restaurant growth and restaurant scale, right? But the first principle that you just said as a guiding light is visibility, right? Creates recall, and recall creates revenue, right? And there's a direct link through many studies that show the more visible you are, the more people are going to recall you in their mind. And the more they recall you in their mind, the more they're going to turn to you and spend with you, right? And so constantly being present for everybody. But that's hard for restaurateurs, not just to get into those mechanics, but because they don't have things to say, right? And that goes back to this really, I would say almost an epidemic, not to use the word pandemic, of restaurants. And that is, they think a concept that you can become an innovation-led restaurant business around is, okay, I'm an Italian restaurant, I'm a casual format, and I'm going to develop an experience around that. But there's nothing within that framework of a concept that gives you ideas on how to become an innovation-led restaurant, right? Or how to engage with the public on themes, right? So you look at Sweetgreen, they're always talking about how we can sort of change what dining means in America, right? By bringing in healthier foods and so forth, right? It gives them tons of content. And most restaurateurs, because they have the wrong architecture for their concepts, actually don't have things to say beyond sales messages, right? And they lose all sorts of opportunities to be visible, to create recall and revenue, right? And in fact, people can become a little bit blind to the hardcore marketing messages. And that's why, you know, the human brand and the thought leadership and all those other pieces that you see our leaders have that are able to talk and write books and so forth are so and such incredible opportunities if you have the right concept architecture that allows you to get there.
I love it. Great stuff. I'm sure a lot of that is in that book that you wrote.
A lot of it's in the book. Anybody who's interested, go to Peter Lesar, lesar.com. You'll see it there on the site. There's a little red link on the top. They can learn about this new same store growth training, which has all this work in there. And it's an unusual training, Matt, because I actually give 2 free calls to people as part of that training so that they can, when they're partway through it, we strategize on what they've learned in relation to the restaurant. When they're always through it, we have another call, right? Because I'm not trying to sell a lot of these. I'm trying to sell enough so that I can serve effectively everybody who calls, everybody who takes it, if that makes sense.
Love it. So check out peterlesar.com. Same store growth training, top of the screen. Click that button, schedule your 2 free calls, have a conversation with the man, and figure out what you can do differently. Peter, have an amazing weekend.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Hey, thank you, sir.
Yeah, talk to you soon. Be good.